Hello and welcome to the Comic Book Club. I'm your host, Matt Lasik, and I know a lot about comic books.
I'm your co-host, Kendra Forte, and I know nothing about comic books.
And this is, remember last week when I prepared ahead of time and I had the episode number ready?
You didn't do that this time,
I didn't do this time. This is episode 22. And today we are going to take a look at Sam Wilson, Captain America, which is the name of the comic book. It's not just me saying two names. Specifically, the hashtag Take Back the Shield arc, running from issues 14 to 21. I want to give a sort of a content warning here. This was published in 2016, and it depicts scenes of police brutality and systemic racism in ways that feel very real and still very raw after the events of last summer. So, yeah, just want to put that out there. Did I miss anything that I need to give warnings for?
I have hot takes. In the
content warning for Kendra's hot takes.
Do you have any hot takes that you want a content warning?
No. For those of you listeners who don't know, I am a white man.
And I am a black woman.
Yeah, so, and Sam Wilson is a black man, so obviously we've got different perspectives, so, my role in this is going to be describing the story and giving any background information for why things are important, and Kendra's role in this episode is to give hot takes with her, perspective that I don't have. So yeah, you ready for this?
Yes. Any thoughts on the comic as a whole before we start?
I really like the art, and I know I say that a lot, but it's because I only read comics that I like the art on. So, it's Paul Renaud is doing the art, at least in the first couple issues, and I like it. I think it fits. As a whole, I also just think it's... I want to touch on something, and it's something I touched on with the last episode, and it's something I'll touch on again when we reach the end. This really feels like it was building up to something, and then it got hard neutered because they had to set things up for Secret Empire, which was the event directly following this story arc. And I'll get into what I mean when we finish our read through. But yeah, there's this big sense of momentum that's building up, and then the last two issues really cash in on that. But then the drop off is very fast and very sudden because they have to shift things into gear for Secret Empire, and Secret Empire wasn't good. So there's that. But yeah, other than that, I just as a whole, I like this. I liked it when I first read it in 2016. I liked it now when I reread it for the show. I'm a fan of this run. With that being said, let's hop into this. Starting with issue 14, we see Senator Thomas Harold, who is a senator of Texas. He is one of the three, in my notes I refer to them as the Whiteys. He's one of the three old rich white men that's in charge of AmeriCops, which is the private security force that's acting as a police force in New York City. The other two are Harry Hauser, who is what's the dude's name on Fox News with the hair, and he's Tucker Carlson. Cool. Harry Hauser is like a Tucker Carlson or like a InfoWars type of guy. He's the one on the news yelling about whatever, evil immigrants. And then the third one is the actual money behind it. He's the CEO that funded it, and his name is Keene. So those are the three Whiteys. You got Harold, Hauser, and Keene. So issue 14, we see how Harold fundraising in New York City. He's giving a speech to a room full of rich old white people, and it's like the typical right-wing fear-mongering speech. He name drops communism. He name drops the Constitution. He name drops illegal immigrants. that kind of stuff. Again, this felt very raw in 2016, and still to this day. Things aren't he who shall not be named isn't the president anymore, but the culture is still there.
I totally forgot he was the president.
Yeah, it felt like that, didn't it? Unfortunately, the new one isn't much better. But yeah, I feel like a lot of people were in some of those where it's the big evil is gone. There's still evil, but we won't think about it now because the big one is gone. Anyways, that's your daily dose of politics on this show. No, there's going to be a lot of politics in this episode. So yeah, Harold is fundraising. He's giving his right-wing speech. The crowd's loving it, and he's interrupted by dun 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 the Flag Smasher. So those of you who are listening to this because you were watching The Falcon and the Winter Soldier on Disney Plus, you would know that the MCU Flag Smashers are an organization, and there is no one quote-unquote Flag Smasher. Things are a little different in the comics. The Flag Smasher is one man named Carl Morgenthau, and he leads an organization called Ultimatum. And yes, that is an acronym, and no, I don't remember what it is because it's very long and dumb. But it's funny. Flag Smasher's MO is that he's very liberal, and he wants to, like, dissolve all borders, but he gets about that goal by committing atrocities and human rights violations. And that's something that, it's something that I want to talk about right now because it's something that I noticed while we were watching Falcon and Winter Soldier, and it's something that I, like, ever since I was made aware of it, I've seen it a lot more. It comes up, like, 2 or 3 times in here. It's where the villain is technically more in the, like, morally more in the right than the heroes in terms of, like, their end goal, but the writers don't want the audience to like the villain more than the hero, so they have the villain commit some sort of war crime or human rights violation.
This doesn't make me like the hero less. It just makes me not care about human rights.
Well, okay. It's the example in Falcon and Winter Soldier that made me made me notice it, like, is that, like, the whole time the Flag Smashers are talking about, like, oh, we're doing this to help the people that are being ignored by, like, the multinational government force that's trying to repair things after the blip. So we're, like, stealing medicine and food and, like, distributing it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can get behind that. Like, sometimes the system ignores people, and you gotta help the people that are ignored. And then they go, oh yeah, while we're at it, we're gonna blow up a building full of civilians. And it's like, oh, okay. I thought you were helping civilians. What's up with that? So, in that line, Flag Smasher wants to dissolve corrupt governments and open borders. But, to do that in this scene, he straps a bunch of bombs to people.
Hold on. I just realized that the group name is Ultimatum, which makes his entrance line a lot cooler. Because whoever the guy is, Tom Harold,
yeah,
is like, we won't be cowed by terrorist threats, and he's like, this isn't a threat, it's an ultimatum.
Yeah.
And, like, the music from CSI Miami played in the back of my head.
I'm gonna really quick look up what ultimatum stands for, because it's very dumb, and I want you to know it. I want you to know what it is. Ultimatum is an organization that stands for Underground Liberated Totally Integrated Mobile Army to Unite Mankind.
If he has totally in there, it's automatically dumb.
I mean, it's not good, and it's clearly just like he wanted to name it Ultimatum.
Yeah, if you wanted to name it Ultimatum, just name it Ultimatum. Don't bother making it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to stand for anything. Yeah. It can just be Ultimatum.
And that's not like a modern, like, mid-2000s comic writers being funny. They debuted in 1986. So in 86, they debuted as Underground Liberated Totally Integrated Mobile Army to Unite Mankind. So yeah, that's that. So Flag Smasher sets up his hostages situation, and he says that he's only going to release them if both Captain America's... if both Caps show up, both Sam and Steve. Remember that at this point, Steve has been rejuvenated, but he's Steve-il, which is the in-canon name for...
Evil Steve.
Yeah, Steve-il. That's actually what they refer to him as, and I hate it. Yeah, another reason why Secret Empire sucks. But yes, so it becomes like a whole news thing. There's a protest that's set up outside of the hotel where this, like, fundraising event initially was. We get to see some white people yelling at Sam about how he's not the real Captain America because he never served in the military. Just completely ignoring the dozens of times, hundreds of times even, that Sam, as both Falcon and Captain America, put his life on the line to save all of reality and not just America's military interests. But, he didn't serve in the military, so he's not the real Captain America.
It was never about the military. It's because he's black.
Yeah, of course it is. But, it makes for a more realistic story if the protesters don't outright say, I'm racist, you know? Because no one's going to say that in real life unless they're like,
no,
way not so.
Some of them will proudly say it. Yeah,
it's weird. I don't know. But yes, so both Captains Americas show up at the scene. They have like a big handshake moment in front of all the protesters to try and make it like a kind of a PR thing. And there's a kind of a cute scene where Sam's like, all right, how are we handling this? Am I flying us up? Do we have like stealth tech? And he's like, Cap's just like, or sorry, not Cap. They're both Cap. Steve's just like, nah, let's take the elevator. So they have a little conversation about how the media and like everyone is treating Sam as they're taking the elevator up. And it's nice until you remember that Steve is still Hydra at this point and is actively working to ruin Sam's reputation. So that's weird. They enter the ballroom. Flag Smasher's got his feet up on the table and he's drinking a thing of champagne.
Real classy stuff.
Real classy stuff for a man that strapped a bunch of bombs to people. Flag Smasher explains that he's doing this just to get their attention because he's worried about the rise of racism and nationalism in America. And again, he's right, but also he strapped bombs to people.
And what I took away from this is it's okay to strap bombs to people if you're right.
I don't know if that's the takeaway. I really don't think that's correct. Okay, you know what? I'm going to say this. We here at the Comic Book Club do not condone strapping bombs to people to get your point across. No, we don't. Legally, we do not, okay? If you say so, you have to declare that you as an independent entity, that you, Kendra Forte, and not you, the Comic Book Club, are saying those things. Do you understand?
I understand.
Okay, moving on. As he's chatting, his people hack into the TSA and delete the no-fly list. Again, I'm all for it, but also you've strapped bombs to people. I remember this was published in like early 2016, so the no-fly list was still very much a big ticket item. So yeah, as he's doing this, he just starts setting off bombs. Like, you almost had it, man. You could have just been like, all right, I've deleted the no-fly list. I've made my point. Your attention has been gathered. Away, ultimatum. And then you spare, like, 50 people. But nope, he's like, all right, as I'm reaching my goal, I'm also going to blow up these people.
Because then it wouldn't make him a villain, and there would be no one for the heroes to fight. Because then they kind of just look...
Wrong?
Yeah,
well, maybe that's what was needed. Fighting begins, punch, kick, whatever. At the end of the fight, Flag Smasher puts a gun to Harold's head. Sam takes the shot with his shield, but he misses, and Harold gets shot in the skull.
I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, because Flag Smasher kind of steps out of the way, and then steps back and shoots Harold in the face. So it's a little comedic.
Because Sam has a mini monologue. He's like, I know everything about the shield. It's a tight quarters, and I can still do this. And he was like, you missed.
Yeah. It's okay, though. It's not fully Sam's fault, because it turns out that this whole situation was a setup by Hydra and Steve-O to both eliminate Harold, who knew too much about Steve's role in convincing U.S. agent, a.k.a. John Walker, to attack Sam in the previous issues, and also to make Sam look bad in the eyes of the press, because Steve-O reveals that he wants Sam to live as a failure and to, like, willingly give up being Captain America instead of, like, just killing him behind the scenes, because then he would become a martyr. Which is, like, you know, martyr bad, makes sense. The last little twist is that this is not the real Flag Smasher. This is just a life model decoy, which is aka an LMD, which is something that will come up later. So a life model decoy is basically just a robot that looks really, really close to human. But it doesn't have... It's different from, like, a synthezoid-like vision, because a life metal decoy doesn't have, like, that spark of individuality or whatever. It's just a programmable person. That's issue 14. Now we have some filler. Issue 15 is a Demolition Man filler.
Didn't know who this was. Didn't really care.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. No one ever knows who he is. I don't know who he is. He was a Captain America sidekick for, like, a year, maybe? Probably less. Like, way back long ago, and now he just kind of hangs around as tech support for Sam. But this issue's about him. Turns out at some point in his past he was a pro wrestler, and he's returning to pro wrestling for like a charity event. Sam, Joaquin, aka the New Falcon, and Rage are all invited as VIPs. If you want to know more about those characters, listen to last week's episode. Sam, Joaquin, and Rage are all VIPs, although this is the first time that Sam and Rage have seen each other since the big AmeriCops protest / riot in the earlier issues. And like their whole thing, there's this big thing of like, like D-Man doesn't know who he's gonna fight. It's this big mystery thing. And it turns out his mystery opponent is Lamar Hoskins, aka Battlestar, who was John Walker's former partner when Walker was operating as Captain America. It turns out that DM and Battlestar have bad blood. Back when D-Man was a wrestler, Hoskins tried to get his start in pro wrestling, and D-Man basically trounced him and fully disrespected him in the ring and like nipped his career in the bud, which is not a cool thing to do.
I think it'd be very interesting to watch.
Sure, but it made D-Man look like a jerk.
That's the point of wrestling.
Yeah.
I watch it for the story.
Yeah, now we're getting into the semantics of like heel face turns and all that stuff that I don't know or care about. So, the less we say about it, the better. The match starts. Battlestar is absolutely kicking D-Man around the curb. Just no mercy. In the middle of the match, they spot a couple of like Z-level villains trying to steal the charity money, so they decide to like do big flashy moves on the villains instead. There's like this weird feel-good moral monologue about like the highs and lows of pro wrestling. Yeah, it feels very Riverdale, like the epic highs and lows of high school football, but it's about pro wrestling. And I'm not going to like disparage it too much because I know that like pro wrestling is very important to some people, and I'm talking about comic books, so I don't have any ground to stand on. I'm in a glass house and I'm not throwing stones. Afterwards, D-Man and Battlestar make nice, and that's issue 15. It's just filler. It's the beach episode. I don't know what you want me to say.
There's another filler.
Yeah, issue 16 is Misty Knight filler. It's weird because because issue 14 was start of Marvel's soft relaunch in 2016 called Marvel Now, and it was like a big splashy cover of like Marvel Now, take back the shield, starting this issue. But then it's like one issue of plot and then 2 to 3 issues of filler, like 2.5 issues of filler. So I don't know. Issue 16 is Misty Knight filler. Since Sam is still getting slammed in the media for the death of Senator Harold, and it's like starting to affect his game, Misty arranges for Sam to get a weekend off. We see a brief rundown of Misty's history, like all the different organizations that she's run with and or founded, all the different heroes that she's like helped out. Just she's like, I can't say those words on the radio show. She's a bad mamma jamma. I feel bad. I shouldn't have said that.
You shouldn't have.
Yeah. She learns from a friend, that friend being Stilt Woman, who is a real character in Marvel Comics. She learns from Stilt Woman that a lot of lesser-known female heroes and villains have had sex tapes leaked, but they all claim that like they never actually did those acts that are being portrayed in the videos. And, evidence backs them up. This is a quote from the issue. Misty realizes that, quote, the women in question were sometimes off-world, in prison, or even dead. So something's up with this.
Something's wacky.
Something's hinky. She eventually tracks down one of the dudes in one of the videos. Kind of funny, because she approaches him on the street and he's like, I didn't recognize you with your pants on, or something like that. There's some line about like that. She gets him to spill the beans that all of the women in the videos were just LMDs. So it wasn't actual women being assaulted. It was robot duplicates of the women being assaulted, which isn't much better.
Which is still gross.
Yeah, still terribly gross. This dude points her towards the Slug, who is like a Z-level villain. He's the Kingpin?
Yes.
Imagine that, but fatter and worse.
I saw the pictures.
Yeah.
He just looks kind of gross.
Yeah, he's gross. He's a drug lord that is currently operating out of Florida. So she flies down to Miami to kick his butt, takes Captain America's shield with her.
So anybody can just take the shield. If it's not being used, fair game.
I mean, it's because Sam left for vacation without taking it, so it was just kind of lying around their shared apartment, and she's like, might as well.
If there was already such a thing about taking back the shield, don't take it. Especially not a black woman. It just doesn't look good.
Yeah. Anyways, she takes down Slug, and then there's also a montage of her tracking down all of the people that, like, helped spread the videos online. It's very cathartic. It's a very cathartic montage. Because it's just, like, loser incels being beat up by by Misty Knight with Captain America's shield. I liked that montage.
Hold on. We're missing someone.
Did we miss someone?
I like him. So I'm going to say he's a big part of the past couple of issues.
Mm-hmm.
Who is the one that does all the hacking stuff?
So that is Rick Jones.
I like Rick Jones.
Yeah. He first appeared he actually shares his first appearance with the Hulk's first appearance. So his origin is that he was a loser kid in the 70s. So he was, like, snuck into a military base. And then Dr. Bruce Banner was like, oh my god, that kid's out in the field and the gamma bomb's about to go off. So he goes and, like, rescues the kid, but it leaves him outside of the bunker. Bomb goes off, gamma, Hulk, yada, yada, yada. Rick Jones basically bounced around from being, like, young sidekick, like, hero to hero. So he was Hulk's young sidekick, then he was Captain America's young sidekick, then he was, like, Captain Marvel's young sidekick. Then he, like, founded, like, the Teen Brigade, which was a bunch of other young kids. He was just, like, kind of a constant presence of, like, I'm, like, going to be like, wow, that's super cool, insert superhero here. Eventually he got turned into, like, a hacker man, which didn't really fit his first appearance, but whatever. Yeah, he's a sort of a constant background presence in this. Just being like, I am going to spit computer babble. That is not actual coding information, but I'll make it sound like it is, because you don't know, you're a comic book reader. He gets killed in Secret Empire, which is the event right after this. Yeah, don't worry, he comes back.
They always do.
Yeah, he comes back as a Hulk.
Sure.
Yeah, he's been a Hulk before. Yeah. Most heroes have been a Hulk before.
Whatever that means.
Yeah. Hey, side recommendation, go read Immortal Hulk, it's very good. Yeah. And then issue 16 ends with she and Sam arriving home at the same time, and then they bone. And that's issue 16. Issue 17. This is where things get a little bit more serious. It's still like 75% filler, but then the end is where things start going downhill. So this issue focuses on the new Falcon, aka Joaquin, and Rage. We see a very brief recap of Joaquin's story, that he was... we covered it in last week's episode, but very briefly, he was an illegal immigrant that was helping other illegal immigrants. He got kidnapped by a mad scientist, got his DNA merged with that of Falcon's vampire bird Redwing, so now he's a vampire bird human hybrid. We're also introduced to a woman named Ariella Connor, who is a very racist author and lecturer. She appears on Harry Hauser's show. Again, Harry Hauser is one of the three, now reduced to two, people that are, like, running the AmeriCops. And she basically spills the beans to the world that Joaquin is an illegal and that he, like, has been seen helping other illegals. So, legal issues.
I don't think it's cool to call them illegals.
Oopsies, that's my bad. Sorry. Again, I am an ignorant white person, so I apologize profusely if I have offended you. That is completely on me. Is there something that I should refer to them as? Displaced people?
Displaced people sounds better.
Okay. I apologize. I might cut that out in the edit. I don't know.
Leave it in. It's a learning opportunity.
Sure. Okay, so yes, she basically spills the beans to the world on Harry Hauser's show that Joaquin is technically not a legal resident, and that, you know, he has been seen helping other non-legal residents. So Sam's like, hey, I know you're going to go confront her, so before you do, what is your legal situation? And Joaquin goes, you know the Dreamers program? Yeah, I think I'm in that. And then he shrugs. It's kind of funny, but also, you know, kind of real. That's a lot of this run, is things that are like kind of sort of played for laughs, or like played with like the played to the tropes of superhero comics, but they're also very real issues. And so the energy of that scene feels a little weird. Like the same thing with Flag Smasher, like addressing the no-fly list. It's like, yes, that is a current thing, but I'm kind of reading these to escape reality. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Which is why I hate story arcs like this. I absolutely hate the Black struggle story arc. I cannot stand it. I am Black in real life. I do not need to be Black in comics as well. It's like, I just get enough of it, like, in the real world. Can't things be okay, at least in comics?
Yeah, I get that. Or, like, at least have the problem be something that isn't bearing down on your mind 24/7. Moving on. Joaquin learns that Connor is speaking at ESU that night, so he decides to go and confront her, convinces Rage to join him, and it turns out that the whole student body had the same idea. Everyone at the lecture is, like, booing or has like, big signs up, stuff like that. So, like, it's not, like... It was kind of a little funny where Joaquin's like, I'm going to go and make a scene, but, like, the scene's already been made, bro.
He's like, well, this is underwhelming.
Yeah, so she's up on stage spewing her drivel, and Joaquin goes up on stage to confront her. They argue about immigration. Just, you know, kind of... I don't want to say, like, oh, typical stuff, because that's kind of dismissing it, because they do... There is effort put into this. The writer's clearly trying to address and dismantle the arguments that these people make in real life. So I don't want to just say, oh, it's the typical immigration stuff, because I feel like it is important to at least address that. But again, this is comic book stuff. This is superhero stuff. So it's a little bit uncomfortable to read, because it's a man with big feathers on his arms and a bright green outfit talking to a white woman about how undocumented immigrants aren't evil and trying to steal all jobs and that kind of stuff, you know? So, strange energy. However, it's interrupted by someone throwing a grenade on stage, so you don't have to worry about it for too long. A bunch of college students armed with many, many explosives have decided the best way to combat racism is by blowing up all racists.
And you know what? This is a group I'd be a part of. They had a cool name.
Kendra is speaking as an individual.
Yep, this is me speaking as an individual and not a comic book club. Kendra as an individual would definitely say, you know what, let's blow up all racists. I'm tired, let's do that. And
Kendra's views and opinions do not reflect the views and opinions of the comic book club as a whole. That being said, I have a note about, like, see above, about how we've been talking about technically right, but also human rights violations. They all speak in, like, cringy, like, Gen Z millennial talk. Like, they talk like how baby boomers think we talk, you know?
That's fair.
Like, this is a safe space, except for you, and then she throws a grenade. It's weird, because it's juxtaposed right with Joaquin having a very real argument with this modern issue, and then these dudes come in, and it's like, I may be a snowflake, but you're going to be dead, or something like that. I don't understand whether Nick Spencer is on our side or not, you know? It's very strange. The energy is very strange, and I don't know how to resolve it. But Falcon and Rage end up handling them. No one dies. Everything's kind of defused. Sam shows up afterwards. He praises them for how it was handled. As Falcon flies off, Sam hangs back to chat with Rage a little bit more, and he admits that Rage was right about pushing back harder against the AmeriCops in their earlier encounter. So they have a little bit of a bonding moment there. That night, as Rage walks home and, like, hops subway trains because he doesn't have a big fancy flying motorcycle, he comes across a robbery in progress in his neighborhood. It is a pawn shop that is being broken into by Speed Demon and Man Mountain Marco, which is possibly my favorite name for a supervillain, because it's just like, his costume is just, he's a big guy that wears a suit, and his name is Man Mountain Marco, and I think that's very funny. However, the situation he's in is not very funny. So Rage confronts them as they're in the pawn shop. They start fighting, but Speed Demon and Marco cut and run just before the AmeriCops show up. Despite the fact that Rage is currently on the ground bleeding because he just got punched in the face by Man Mountain Marco, the AmeriCops are just like, you're a black man standing in a broken-into pawn shop. This is obviously, you're the one that's doing it. We're going to arrest you. And this is where the light filler turns very hard into serious town. And that's the end of issue 17. We're going to take a breath here, just to process that and sort of allow the transition in our minds to take place, because it is a very heavy transition. Kendra, do you have any thoughts to share at this point, or not quite yet?
Not quite yet.
Okay. You ready to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. Issue 18. It is the next morning. Sam flies to the police station where Rage is being held. There is a massive protest force outside the station. In an earlier issue, we saw a flashback to when Sam, as the Falcon, was in jail for a wrongful arrest. And we saw Steve, good Steve, not Stevel. We saw Steve show up, and basically, like, all of the officers were like, "Oh, you're Captain America. Of course we're going to comply. You say that this black man didn't do it? Okay, Cap, whatever you say." And then they let Sam go.
However, now everyone is suddenly super disrespectful.
Yes, that is. I kind of wish that was shown in, like, this issue or the issue before, and not like 5 issues ago, because it is a direct juxtaposition with this scene wherein Sam shows up and he's like, "I'd like to see Rage, please." And the old white man working the counter is like, "Are you family or a lawyer?" And he's like, "No, but I'm Captain America." And then the white man goes,
"Not my Captain America."
Yeah, he goes, "Not my Captain America." But that is cut off by a black police officer coming up and saying, like, "Oh, Captain America, sir, of course, let me take you back." So Sam starts talking with Rage. He's like, "Okay, here's all these, like, big, rich, powerful superheroes that we know. Here's all these superhero lawyers that we know."
Hold on. This is totally unrelated to, like, the deepness that's going on here. But he mentions that Peter Parker is now rich.
Yes.
How did that happen?
He made an Apple Watch-like device called WebWare.
That's cute. Good for Peter.
Yeah. And then he got rich off of it. That's what was happening in 2016 in Spider-Man comics. Of course it didn't last because he's Peter Parker. But that's beside the point. So Sam's like, "Okay, here's all these rich and powerful people we know. Here's all these, like, good superhero lawyers that we know." And Rage doesn't want any of that. Rage says he wants to make a point by going with how the system treats men like him, which means getting, like, a bad public defender, getting, like, imbalanced jury, the whole 9 yards. He wants to go through all of that, like how a normal black man would go through all of this to expose it to the world, because his case is a big deal in terms of news. Everyone's covering it at the time.
Okay. However, who wrote the story? Was it a person of color?
Let's find out. Nick Spencer. He is white.
Anywho, there have been tons of, like, high-profile cases, not exactly like this, because this is a superhero world, where it's been put in the spotlight that black men have had it rougher in the judicial system. So, take a selfish. Be selfish for once.
Yeah, I think the difference is, first of all, we don't know how many real-life events are said to happen off-panel in these comics. So, that's...
He can't possibly be the first high-profile black man case.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's also, he's getting so much attention because he has been working as a partner with Captain America for the past couple months. So it's, you know... it's in this universe, it's a very big deal. It's like my brain is not giving me any rich black men at the moment. It's like if, I don't know, Dwayne Johnson. That's not a good example. He's too rich. I don't know. I don't have a good real world equivalent for this because it's superhero comics. But the point is that this is becoming like a big media thing, so Rage is seeing this as an opportunity to make a point. He's willing to sacrifice his own well-being to try and affect permanent change in his world, which is pretty admirable. Not great for him and the people that know him and like him and want him to be, healthy and stuff, but it's very admirable. He wants to show everyone how the system railroads people like him when they're not rich and or powerful. Sam doesn't like this. Sam is not willing to let Rage make this sacrifice. So he revisits something that was set up a couple issues before, in an issue that we didn't directly address. A while ago, when the AmeriCops were sort of getting started in New York City, he had this thing set up where he wired his telepathic bird speech to a database. So everything that every bird sees in New York City gets stored as a video in this huge database. So going through this database, Sam finds footage that proves Speed Demon entered the shop long before Rage arrived on the scene. However, Sam is hesitant to release this footage to the public. This angers Joaquin, so that their relationship sort of shatters a little bit there, which is important for later stories, not so important for this story. Sam basically goes around asking people what he should do. All of his friends in the superhero community tells him to release the footage immediately, mostly because all of those people are close friends with Rage already. But an aide at the mayor's office that Sam meets with, I feel like it's important to mention that this aide is a man of color.
I don't trust anybody who's a person of color in this comic any longer.
Elaborate.
Because it was written by a white man?
I see.
No one in this comic is truly on the people of color's side. White people, no matter... Okay, I'm going to stop there.
You're saying, I'll say it for you since I'm white, you're saying that white people can't fully... stories about this kind of struggle written by people who are not of color don't have the same weight to them because the writers haven't experienced it in their own lives?
That's true. However, no white person is on a black person's side. They are on their own side. And it might sometimes align with a black view. However, it is still two completely different things.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever heard that before. I will have to reevaluate how I live my life. I will say that the artist is Daniel Acuna, and the last name suggests that he's a person of color. But it's it's still not. Yeah, I will Google it. But we don't know if Spencer took any notes from Acuna. He's a Spanish comic book artist, so he is.
It's not the same. You can't just conflate all people of color.
I know. I'm trying to make excuses. I don't know why. I shouldn't be doing that. And like I just said, we don't know if he even gave any notes to Spencer about this. And again, he didn't hear that. So yes, I acknowledge that there does not seem to be any black people on this creative team. So, yeah.
So it makes the whole comic just even more infuriating to me.
Yeah. Where was I? Yes. So Sam visits the mayor's office, and they basically tell him, "Don't release the footage. It could tear the country apart." Kendra has thoughts.
That is a very white person concern.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because according to people of color, I can't speak for all people of color because I just said don't conflate all people of color. However, as a black person, the world is already torn apart. It just would somehow fracture a little bit the white person's dream.
Yeah. You know what? Edit this. It wouldn't tear the entire country apart. It would tear the white person's country apart.
It would.
Eventually, Stan goes to Stevel for advice, and he's basically like, follow your heart, or whatever. I don't know. And issue 18 ends with Sam releasing the footage.
He went to a pastor, which is the blackest thing he's done.
That pastor is also his brother.
See, now it's boring.
Sam goes to church a lot in this run, actually. But it's always the church that's run by his brother, who's a pastor.
And then it's just a family event. It's not for God.
Yeah. God isn't talked about much in superhero comics because you've got people like Thor running around. So, you know.
This brings up my entire issues about religion, and we don't have time.
Yeah, we might have time. We have 20 minutes left, so we'll see. Issue 19. Despite the footage, the charges are not dropped. Surprise, surprise. The trial is an absolute circus. Rage doesn't meet his overworked, incompetent public defender until 2 hours before. He gets a tough-on-crime judge, and tough-on-crime just basically means if you come into my courtroom, you're guilty. The jury is nearly all white. The prosecutor is over-aggressive. The prosecution only gets, like, cops and forensic scientists and those type of people, while the defense relies solely on character witnesses. It's a vertical slice. It's a term I'm looking for. Diorama? That's not it. It's a perfect snapshot of how a court case like this would go in real life. And as we've been saying, that is not a very fun thing to read in a superhero comic. But I feel like this does get the point across. I could see this being like an eye-opener to someone who reads comic but doesn't really pay attention to current events. However, the downside of that is if you are this deep into this specific run of Captain America, you probably already care about these types of events. You know what I'm saying? Because this run is very, very political and very, very liberal. So, if the type of person who doesn't care about this kind of political stuff and reads comic books, they wouldn't have reached this issue. They would never have gotten this deep. So the value of this scene is a little bit diminished. The cherry on top is that Sam's bird footage is deemed inadmissible. And there's a mention that, like, his whole aviation spying thing is going to be addressed in court on its own anyways.
That's another issue. So we're not going to address it here. However, bad.
Yeah. This leads Sam to go on a rampage through the city's underworld to track down Speed Demon. He eventually does, and convinces Speed Demon to go to court and confess. However, by the time he gets back to the courthouse, the trial has already wrapped up. In another jarring shock of reality, the jury deliberated for less than 10 minutes before deciding on the guilty verdict. And the city explodes into rioting, and that's not hyperbole. It literally, like a flip of a switch, like these things typically do in real life. We specifically focus on a young black boy who paints his face to look like Rage's mask and throws a Molotov onto a bank.
Who was that helping, little boy? Who was that? Who does that benefit?
We've seen this kid in a couple montages previously, just like when it's like, here is all of the characters reacting to something sudden happening. Like the senator getting shot, like Rage getting arrested. We've seen him before. So he's a bit of a common thread. But yeah, it's a kid. He's upset. His hero just got...
Any kid who knows how to make a Molotov cocktail is not a kid anymore.
I suppose. Issue 20. The AmeriCops start combating the riots again in a shot to the arm of reality. It's in ways that are very, very similar to last summer's riots. So there's beating, tear gas, all that stuff. Hauser is only making things worse on his show. Again, like last summer. During this, Sam visits Rage in prison. Rage has accepted his fate. This is basically exactly what he wanted. He wants the systems to be burnt down so that better things can be built in their place.
The system will never burn down for a black man.
Yeah, this is a view that I feel I see a lot in these types of stories, and in real life when these types of things happen. But it's just not an outcome that seems likely to me. Like, I don't think that with the current state of stuff like technology and how long the systems have been put into place, I don't think there will ever be a riot big enough to permanently burn down a system. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm gonna say let's move on.
Okay, that's fair. This is very heavy. Yes. We learned that Rage is being transferred to the Z Block, which is a for-profit. The Z Block is a for-profit prison complex for superpowered people that is rife with budgeting issues and violence, both violence between prisoners and violence between guards and prisoners. Again, very real and very uncomfortable. It is at this point...
don't get for-profit prisons. Who let that be a thing?
The American government. Most prisons in America are for-profit, I believe.
I understand, but okay.
Yeah, it's... You think about stuff like that and you realize that, like, if in the year 2020... Imagine that libraries were never a thing. If someone in the year 2020... Or 2021, it's not 2020 anymore. If someone in 2021 tried to start libraries, they would never make it through. They'd be called a communist or a socialist.
I saw a news article where someone was like, we should get rid of libraries and replace them with Amazon bookstores.
Yeah, that is, well, that's the mentality between for-profit prisons, I suppose. I just realized that I had been referring to last summer's events as riots. I would like to correct that. They were protests.
Yes.
So, just put that on the record. I apologize. I'm doing a lot of that this episode, but I feel like it is needed. Because of who I am as a white man. Sam makes a public statement encouraging peaceful protests and condemning the more violent rioters, just condemning violence in general. He eventually goes to his brother's church, where his brother gives a very long sermon on the current situation.
I didn't think it was long for a black person sermon.
Okay, then maybe we've gone to different churches. Okay.
Yes.
The church that I always went to, the pastor was a very old woman, and she would give very long sermons, and she would talk very slowly, and after every sermon, everyone around me would go, that was really long. So... we have different learned experiences, and that's what I'll say on that. The sermon is very touching. It talks about, maintaining strength in your community and maintaining hope. During this, though, we see Rage getting brutally beat by other prisoners, and due to that, he enters a coma. And that is issue 20. Last one. Issue 21. The story is primarily told via a note that Sam wrote for Misty, kind of summarizing his life and his history with Steve up to this point. Meanwhile, we see Hauser meeting Keene, the man behind the funding for AmeriCops. They summarize sort of their parts in this plot so far in getting the AmeriCops going, in convincing John Walker to attack Sam, all that stuff. During the meeting, Steve shows up. He reveals that Keene's whole plan this whole time for the AmeriCops was to harass people of color out of low-income areas so that he could then buy them up and gentrify them and sell them for profits.
Not much of an evil villain plan, since that happens all the time.
Yes, again, something that is just very real. Something that's not real, however, is that Keene dies for this. Steve poisons him, reveals that Hauser is part of Hydra. They do the whole Hail Hydra thing. Sam continues his letter, sort of summarizing his time as Captain America so far. During this, Demolition Man and Sam's brother are walking through the rubble of the city after the riots. They're talking about rebuilding stronger and better and whatever. This, of course, does not happen because Secret Empire happens, and that just makes this story null and void. Joaquin visits Rage in the hospital, vows to continue fighting on his behalf. Sam records sort of like a vlog, a video announcement to encourage his supporters to not lose hope and to the same message that we've been saying for the past couple issues: keep hope, keep strength, yada yada yada. His letter eventually tells Misty that his way of protesting is to give up the shield and the mantle of Captain America and return to being the Falcon, and he does, which is the worst decision that he's made in this run.
Dumb decision. Made by a white person for the white people.
Yeah. And we also see the kid that we mentioned earlier being put down the path to become the new Patriot, who has been traditionally a Captain America-related black person. Like a younger black person that is in some way related to Captain America that works with like a shield and stuff. The first Patriot was Elijah Bradley, who was the grandson of Isaiah Bradley.
Yes.
Yeah, who you would know of if you either watched Falcon and Winter Soldier or listened to last week's episode. Unfortunately, all of this stuff is just kind of ruined by Secret Empire. I think that because they've been building up to Secret Empire for like 2 or 3 years now, so I think that they stopped. They put Sam, they being like the writers and editors at Marvel, put Sam back in the Falcon mantle so that they could have this big turnaround of like defeating Steve-O and getting the real Steve back and making him be Captain America again. Which, like, yeah, I get it. It's comics returning to status quo. We've seen it a billion times. We'll see it a billion more. But I think they could have done more with Sam as Captain America. I do think that this was the culmination of the possibilities they could have done with him. Like, this was probably the most important story they could have done with Sam operating as Captain America. But I would have liked to see more of the fallout. I would have liked to see some sort of resolution with the AmeriCops, some sort of resolution with Joaquin and Rage.
Because there's no resolution in real life. So
yeah, we go to comics for escapism and for resolutions that we just don't get in real life. And we just don't see it here. So yes, this would eventually be followed by Secret Empire, where Steve-O gets defeated and Steve comes back to being Captain America. There would eventually be a new ongoing featuring Sam as the Falcon. And we do see more of Joaquin in there, and we see more of the new Patriot in there. The new Patriot who comes into the costume during Secret Empire. There are a couple more issues on this run. I think they're still called Sam Wilson Captain America, but it's all just Secret Empire tie-in stuff, and it's kind of boring. It's just him griping about no longer being Captain America, and Misty being like, why did you give up Captain America? You're an idiot. And then, like, the last issue, he's like, I'm going to be Captain America one more time, and it's to kick Steve-O's butt. And then he does, and then he stops being Captain America again. Do you have any final thoughts on this?
I just really hate stories like this.
Yeah.
Especially when they're not written by people of color.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, it's rough. There aren't many people in the comic book industry that are not white. Comic book companies do not hire many talented people of color. They prefer to hire white people.
Yes.
Next, in 2 weeks, we will be discussing Giant Days, the first 10 to 12 issues, which is about it's an indie slice of life about British college students, and it's very fun. So we need something light after this, so look out for that. If you want to talk to us about anything, if you have recommendations, questions, deep dive suggestions, anything like that, you can tweet us at CBBCPod on Twitter. That's at CBBCPOD. Or you can email us at cbbcpod@gmail.com. I've been your host, Matt Lasik.
I've been your co-host, Kendra Forte.
And until next week, Excelsior.